Good time of day that you are watching this. Today we are going to be tackling a big question that I know has just been nagging on your mind since, 17 years, I'm sure. What is a radian? Now, I'm actually going to start this by talking about degrees, because a radian is going to be talking about an angle just like degrees are talking about an angle. In previous years, you've probably already started talking about angles, like a triangle has 3 angles. So like when it comes to an angle, you should know what an angle is. When it comes to degrees, you have been measuring degrees for a while, like maybe this is 30 degrees, maybe this is 90 degrees, who knows? But those are degrees. That's just how you have been doing it. But it actually turns out that most of the time we don't use degrees anymore, at least like in higher level maths. Like if you go into construction things, they'll definitely still use degrees. But when you start going into trigonometry, you're more likely to be using radians, which is why I want to talk about. But before I do that, like I said, I want to nerd out for a second. Degrees, you've been using them forever. And if I was to ask you how many degrees are in a circle, would you know how many degrees are in a circle? The answer is 360. And now I'm going to ask you a question you probably don't know. Why is there 360 degrees in a circle? Why aren't there 100 degrees in a circle? Or anything like that? What's so special about the number 360? And it's actually a pretty interesting story. I'm not going to talk about it here because of time, but if you want to pause the video and just go Google it or something, why is there 360 degrees in a circle? It's interesting. It's interesting. It turns out that it has absolutely nothing to do with math, or at least for them, everything to do with math. There you go. We are going to be talking about radians. Radians is actually based upon circles, and we're going to be putting angles inside of circles. What 1 radian is, like instead of like having 1 degree, right? If you draw 1 degree, it's super, super thin. But, 1 degree. What does 1 radian look like? Sorry. I don't like this pen anymore. If you were to have this and you were to have this, you could say this angle right here is 1 degree. That's what it looks like. So we're going to be talking about what does 1 radian look like? The analogy. Instead of 1 degree, what does 1 radian look like? And that's going to tell you what the definition is and why we're going to use it. So here we go. 1 radian. If you create an angle so that this distance, which you guys are going to know as the radius, if this distance is equal to a distance arc on a circle, so like this length is the same thing as this length, which I think it about is. Hopefully it looks the same to you. This distance is equal to that distance. It's just this one is curved. If you create that into an angle so that this is the same as that is the same as that, kind of like an equilateral triangle, except this side is curved. When you create this angle, this is called 1 radian. So this is one radian. So it's when the radius is equal to the arc length. If you have 2 radii, where they make an angle that makes the arc equal to that radius, it's going to be considered 1 radian. Which means if you were to like open this up again, let's see if I can do it to scale, because everything makes more sense when it's to scale. So if you go this distance and that distance again and make this into another triangle, so that length is the same as that is the same as that, then this angle right here would be considered 2 radians because it's twice as long as that. So the arc length is equal to the angle, and that's what's going on there. When we talk about the unit circle, that's what it's talking about. It's where the arc length is equal to the radius. Or if it's twice the arc is twice as big as the radius, then it's 2. And you could go one more like this. That distance is about that. This would be 3 radians right there. And that's what a radian is. Interesting thing, at least I think it's super interesting. One of the things you're going to learn later is that in a circle, actually let's just talk about it right now. A circle, I want to be talking about what a radian is in terms of how many are inside of a circle. We are talking about arc length here, right? So there's 300 degrees in a circle. Now I want to talk about how many radians are in a circle. And keep in mind, when a radian, we're talking about the angle is equal to the arc length. So if we want the angle to be a full circle, we want the arc length to be a full circle. Do you remember what the outside of a circle is called? What is the length of the outside? What is the perimeter of the circumference? It starts with a C. It is the circumference. The circumference of the circle will be equal to the angle of an entire circle. The formula for circumference was either pi times d, the diameter, or c equals 2 pi r. Those are the two formulas you've used in the past. And on the unit circle, which we talk about, the radius is equal to 1. Since the radius is equal to 1, 2 pi times 1 is just 2 pi. So the circumference is 2 pi, which means we're going to define the circle in radians going to be 2 pi radians. So the angle is 2 pi, just like the circumference would be 2 pi. So if you go all the way around a circle, that is 2 pi. Interesting story, if this is 2 pi, then half of a circle would be 1 pi. So 1 pi, 2 pi. Why is that interesting? Because if I was to draw the diameter here, trying to be as exact as I can, and failing because this pen right here, if you don't know, pi is approximately 3.14. And since I tried to do this as best to scale as I can, you can see that this was 3. And here's the 0.14. Just a little bit more than 3 is 3.14, which is pi. So if you do things to scale, it actually turns out to work. 3.14 would make that 180 degree half of a circle. So that's what a radian is. I think it's pretty cool. Everything else you do with radians is going to be like that. Like if this is 1 pi, then this like straight up and down would be half pi. So that's going to be pi over 2. You'll learn more about that as you do the unit circle, but everything stems from this. That's what a radian is, and it's super awesome. If none of this made sense to you, and you're only here because some math teacher somewhere is making you do problems, blah, 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 just give me that grade, whatever, then the big takeaway you need to know from this is that there's 360 degrees in a circle, but for the same thing, it's 2 pi radians. They are considered the same. 360 degrees and 2 pi radians. They're just different ways of measuring an angle. 360 degrees will measure an angle, 2 pi radians would measure an angle. And in terms of conversion, they're exactly the same. So hopefully this helps. Woo! I know I had fun. I hope you had fun too. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.